Please welcome Dr. Carrie Gray from the National Audubon Society.
Hi, my name is Carrie Gray. I'm with the National Audubon Society, and we work to protect important bird habitats across the hemisphere, from Canada to Chile. Pristine, unbroken landscapes that support thriving bird populations are increasingly difficult to find in most of the world, but not in Canada. In particular is the boreal forest, which we at Audubon affectionately call the bird nursery of North America. And that's because every spring, 1 to 3 billion birds will migrate to this vast region. And by summer's end, 1 to 2 billion more birds will be produced by those birds. And at the heart of the boreal forest in northern Ontario lies the ancestral lands of the Mushkegowuk Council. This region of stunning beauty is teeming with life, and it includes the Hudson Bay lowlands, the 3rd largest wetland in the world, and the 2nd largest peatland, which stores billions of tons of carbon, and of course, Tawich, this coastal environment in the bay. And if we zoom in a little bit closer, you can see that almost the entire coastline of the Mushkegowuk National Marine Conservation Area is mapped as either important sea duck habitat, shown here in purple, or as an important bird area, shown in blue. Now, important bird areas are places, these are designations that are places of international significance for the conservation of birds and wildlife. And Tawich is indeed important for birds because nearly 150 bird species breed in this region, and dozens more use it during migration. One of the reasons why this area supports such a wide diversity of bird life is because of the variety of habitats it provides. You have, of course, the marine region, which feeds into these expansive and food-rich tidal mudflats, which at low tide can be up to 15 kilometers wide. There are massive coastal marshes that extend tens of kilometers inland. Some of the most southerly tundra habitat in the world that provides habitat for birds that typically breed much farther north. The region also hosts a rich landscape of muskeg, intertwining bogs and fens that extend right up to the coastline in some parts of James Bay. And so it is this variety and diversity of habitats and resources that Tawich provides that gives rise to the wealth of bird diversity and abundance that we find here. But this region also plays a critical role for birds that breed elsewhere in Canada and that pass through here on migration. It's important to remember that 80% of the bird species in Canada are migratory. And so while protecting nesting areas is very important to support healthy bird populations, we also need to protect the places where they winter and the places that they use during migration. And so birds need places along their migration route where they can safely stop to rest and refuel and feed. And we call these places stopover habitats. And they are critical to ensure the survival of a bird during its migration, which is without a doubt the most vulnerable period of the year for a bird. And if we look at this map, we can see these are the 4 major North American flyways that birds use. And birds that will pass through Hudson and James Bay are in the Atlantic Flyway and Mississippi Flyway. And you can see that this is a wide area that they'll be coming from breeding areas. And the shape of Hudson Bay essentially funnels birds south into James Bay. And so what happens is in the fall, you end up with these huge concentrations of birds and that are there fueling up for the next leg of their flight. And this is especially true for shorebirds. Shorebirds often migrate tens of thousands of kilometers each way in spring and fall and are known to take some of the longest nonstop flights of any type of bird. And one example is this Rufa subspecies of red knot. And so the red knot, you can see here, they breed up here in the high Arctic. And then this purple shows this is a migration stopover area. And about 30% of this endangered species stops over in southern Hudson and western James Bay for about 10 to 12 days each fall. And then they move on and carry on down to their wintering areas in South America. But once they leave James Bay, a lot of these birds will not stop again until they reach the Caribbean. So it's essential that they have these extensive mud flats where they can put on the fat that they need to fuel a 5,000-kilometer nonstop flight. And it's not just red knots. The Mushkegowuk NMCA is on a major migration route for at least 25 shorebird species, which has led to this area being proposed as a site of hemispheric importance for shorebirds. And there's another type of migration that this region plays a critical role, and this is a molt migration. So a molt migration is when a bird leaves its breeding area and migrates to a distinct location to replace all of its flight feathers, and before it continues on to its wintering area. This is most common in waterfowl, ducks and geese, but also some other water birds will also do this. A lot of other bird species, songbirds, they lose them one at a time, where this group of birds will lose all of their flight feathers all at once. So they are flightless for a period of 3 to 4 weeks. It's a very vulnerable time period because you can't fly, so you need to have all your food right there, and replacing feathers is energetically very expensive. So, but James Bay supports tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of ducks and geese that migrate specifically there at the end of the breeding season to undergo this process. Now, one of the tools that we use to identify where birds, the places that they need to use throughout the year is with tracking technology. And one of those technologies is the MODIS Wildlife Tracking System. And this is a network of stations that receives data from small radio transmitters that are attached to an animal. And you can see when the bird is within range of one of these towers, it'll transmit, it'll collect the information about the bird's identification number and as well as the date and time of the location. And in this map, every yellow dot represents a MODIS station. And you can see in southern Canada and parts of the US, there's really good coverage. So we can collect a lot of information as birds are moving along through this network. But there's far less coverage up north. But there's a lot of work being done right now by scientists across Canada to expand that coverage so that we can better understand how birds use the boreal region. And I'm very excited to report that in August, we put up a new tower at Sam Hunter's camp on the southern Hudson Bay coast. Memphis's station, named for Sam's grandson, covers about 25 kilometers of the coastline and also extends south about 15 kilometers into the Winnisk River estuary. So we're really excited to see what kind of new information we can collect here about how birds are using this region. So the best way that we can help birds is by protecting the places that, in ensuring that they successfully get through their year by protecting the places that they need: breeding areas, wintering areas, and migration stopover areas. And by doing this, we can help ensure their success every year. And birds really need our help right now because the bird population, you heard me say it in the video earlier, the population, we've lost 30% of our birds in the last 50 years. If you were alive in 1970, 1 in every 3 birds that was on the landscape is gone. And that equates to about 3 billion birds lost in North America and Canada. And 14% of that decline has happened just in the last 10 years. And it's across species, with the exception of waterfowl, which have increased And that's because a lot of work went into protecting waterfowl habitat several decades ago, and they responded well. And so at Audubon, we are working across the hemisphere to protect the places that birds need most. And we are thrilled to see the work being done by the Mushkegowuk Cree, because we know that protecting Tawich will ensure the success of many bird generations to come. So thank you. Have a good night.